The women in this room and all the women of WIN, the leadership, you're doing amazing work. First of all, Marilyn didn't have to coax me out here. I have a whole family here of friends in Northern and Southern California. In fact, a whole wing of the Abzug family, it lives here in LA, judges and aerospace engineers and all sorts of stuff. So what? Hey, thank you. No, I know we're in San Francisco, but they happen to live, most of my family in LA, although my partner and I just came from Sebastopol, where we stayed with a very dear friend of ours last night and met some amazing women from that community. When I came in, I got two name tags, my own and Bella Abzug. I said, gee, I didn't, is she here? I'm a very proud and very educated daughter of one of the, for those of you who don't know and for the young gals in the room, of one of, I believe, as a professor of urban studies and women in leadership at Barnard and Columbia and as an activist all my young and adult woman life, one of the greatest feminist leaders of the 20th century. You know why she was such a great leader? And when we teach the girls at the Bella Abzug Leadership Institute, which are middle school, high school, and college girls from the tri-state area, and even this summer we had a couple of girls from LA, many of whom are disadvantaged and first immigrant children. We say that leadership is inspiring, that one must have compassion, and one must know who one is in order to convey the words of leadership and bring people together that change the world. That one of the things about Bella, before I go to Beijing, is that she had an enormous capacity as a civil rights lawyer, right out of a poor family in the Bronx, worked her way through school, went to Columbia Law School, married my father while she was in law school, and came out and represented a very major case in this country called the Willie McGee case, a black man in the South accused of raping a white woman who he was having a long-term affair with. And she argued that case all the way up to the Supreme Court. She was 27 years old. And when she went down to the Laurel, Mississippi, she couldn't get a hotel room because she was representing this man, and this was local Jim Crow South. And they wouldn't put her up in a hotel room because they knew she was coming there to defend him. She stayed on that case for 4 years. She had to sit up at night in a bus station because they wouldn't give her a hotel room to go into court the next day. She was 27 years old to argue this case, which she brought all the way up to the Supreme Court, which they remanded on a technicality, and he was executed, this man, in Laurel, Mississippi, in a portable electric chair in the top of a courthouse. She was 8 months pregnant during one of her times down there, and she lost her baby during this trial, right before me. So how does one get inspired to have a basis to be a leader? And I speak to all of you in this room who are leaders, particularly the younger women and girls and all of us, are we going to change the nature of power? Yes, come on, yes. Or are women going to change the nature? Are we going to change the nature of power, or will power change the nature of us? No. Through our ability to nurture the planet and to nurture our families and to lead in our villages, communities, and to understand, despite rape and sex trafficking and abuse and being compromised in our pay and not being able to be often the top leaders as we should be of every institution, whether it's elected official, corporate, advocates, NGO world, to be recognized. One of the things that Mom did was that she understood how to connect the feminist American movement with the international movement, who many women in villages in the global South, across the world, and in all sorts of parts of the world were already leading the fight because they were leading their fight in their villages for survival. She understood how to make the connection, you see, between a women's movement in the United States, and one was one of the first, and Marilyn and all of you who were at Beijing know this, to create an agenda where everybody, women, could grapple with all the agenda items of our time, every issue that impacts women and girls. And the reason why she was able to do that and create American feminists, create the dialogue in America for them to understand we have to link to the global south and to women all over the world, is because she was a brilliant tactician and she had compassion, passion, and heart. And for the Beijing platform 20 years later, I was there as a young woman with my partner through the mud. Those of you who went to the unofficial conference in Haru, it rained every day. There was mud. The meetings were intense. And my mother at this point was suffering from stenosis. She could walk, but we had to push her in a wheelchair from tent to tent. She led First Lady Hillary Clinton, who was, of course, famous for her speech, women's rights, human rights, through to each of these tents to meet women that Hillary had never imagined could conduct the kinds of movements and to fight for their families and their villages and their communities under enormous and terrible odds, whether it was female FGM, whether it was sex trafficking, whether it was abuse, child marriage. This was a time, for the first time in modern history, where women from the North, the South, America could get together and share their common concerns. Every item on the platform, which I watched my mother and some of you negotiate, so that that platform, for the first time, women in the grassroots level, the NGO level, could go to the official proceedings at the UN, which was conducted in Beijing, to negotiate with our world leaders, official world leaders, secretaries of state and world leaders, what women and children really wanted and needed. That was 20 years ago. So where are we today? Despite enormous odds, and I wish my mother, she's here, by the way. She's up there. She's in our presence. And there aren't many women or men, in my view, that can lead with heart, compassion, and intelligence, and I give you that as a call to all of you sitting out here, to emerging leaders and you leaders who've been at it for a long time, and the great work that you did, and the honoree, all the honorees today, who have battled in the fields to push the barriers down. Many of my young women at Barnard and Columbia take it for granted, you know this, that, what's wrong? When I tell them that they are not even equal citizens today, and tell you all, the young women in this room, that you technically are not an equal citizen under the federal law and the United States Constitution because we don't have an Equal Rights Amendment that has passed federally. Hello? One of the things I wanted to do, and then I'm just going to go back to Beijing very quickly, is to inspire and ignite this current generation and the next generation of young women to grab the mantle of leadership and to work to make the dreams and the platform items of our agenda a reality. You go to foreign countries, many of you are from. I see immigrant kids that I train in high school, middle school, and college, living in this country, in their homes, with abuse, the father abusing the mother. This isn't just obviously immigrant, this is everybody's household, but I've come to learn that there's a lot of that going on. And in our youth, with our kids, in their homes, girls, and in their schools. We have many Muslim trainees, and what they go through in their schools in New York City and the tri-state area is outrageous, all right? So what I want to do is say, post-Beijing, where are we? Where have we gone in terms of health, education, training, economic justice, CEDAW, violence against women, representation of women at all levels of government and in parliaments? Where are we? What have we done? We're going to be talking about this. And I see you're holding up the sign, but I am the keynote speaker. I get a few extra minutes. You know, there have been so many meetings meetings like this regionally and across the country, across the states, about where we are, what we need to do. But I charge you today with not just, they call me at college Professor of Solutions, oddly enough, because I'm always pressing my students to push the envelope, and my colleagues in the feminist movement. Too much talk. Now we need the action, all right? Too much talk. Now we need the action, seriously. We have listened, we have analyzed, as Marilyn and others have said, we have the data, we have the stories. We have Facebook, we have Twitter, we see it every day. We are lucky to have that, social media, and youth who push it, and all of us who've learned how to do it. We are really lucky because, boy, instant communication and documentation of all that we need to do, and the horrible stories and successes that some of us have fought for and won. So what I was saying today is that as this world grows increasingly and has become so complex, and we have hurt Mother Earth, we are deeply in trouble. Even our sheer survival on this planet as women and girls and men and boys is at question, all right? We know this in terms of negotiating deals, anti-nuclear deals, not only with Iran, but other countries. Women have notoriously worked for peace. My mother started out in the civil rights movement and the peace movement. I was at the ringside of watching that as a young girl and in high school as a peace activist and myself. Because of that, and we know women are, sorry guys, more resilient. And I believe the stronger sex. And we know men. I just came from Sebastopol, and stayed at one of my dear male friends' houses. He says he believes the matriarchal world is going to save the planet. And truly he means that, because he and I work together on a lot of issues related to women's rights and human rights and equal rights. So to sum it up, today we will talk about what barriers we are overcoming and where we need to go. I just want to say a few things that I think we need to know and focus on today. Okay, and then I'll stop. First of all, we need, as I said, to reignite each other. Bring in young women, girls, young men, boys into the movement to realize gender equality, whether it's in this country or abroad. I work every day on this, in every context, and so do people I know. But my responsibility, I have always felt, as one of Bella's daughters, is to bring this to the next generation and to work with my generation to tell them, you must let young women lead and inclusively put them into the center of the debate. And I know we're going to be doing that today. Because we have our language. Everybody has their language in the feminist movement. And the older pioneers that have broken down the barriers have our language. But young women have their own language, and men. And we have to allow them and support them and also educate the context and where they are based on the fact of our work. But support the effort of you young women in this room to say, listen, we have unfinished business. You have to grab the mantle of leadership. We need to finish and complete and get it done in the 21st century. And this is the first quarter of the 21st century. So we have to move quickly. We have to commit to action and work to achieve full gender equality and full equality for all, whether it's based on your gender, sexual orientation, your race, ethnic, religious background, or your socioeconomic background. We must make sure that Hillary Clinton and all the other presidential candidates, but she who we know embrace our agenda, embraces and fights for this agenda, particularly because she has said women's rights are human rights, and she is fully committed to our cause. From the Beijing Women's Conference, she experienced it. She was there. She got what I was explaining to you as a first lady. She was in the trenches with people like Bella and you to make and see what the problems were. But she is not the only one we need to pressure. We need to pressure the other presidential candidates We need to say, you must fight for our equality agenda. We need to say, and I'm asking all of you, this is the call out as a keynote speaker, and because you are such activists in your communities in California and from wherever else you may come, that we need a fifth world conference, fifth world UN conference on women. Now, several of us in this room have pressed for that. All right, we have pressed, and it's on women and girls, a fifth world women's conference, international women's conference on women and girls. And why do I say that? Because we had a fight to get the girl child, the rights of girls, 20 years ago into the platform. Do you know that? That's a natural, right? Yet, we had a fight to have girls be recognized at that time. So we need a commitment from Hillary, from other presidential candidates, to support the demands of the 12 points of our platform and agenda. I'm calling on you, all of you, to continue the work of CEDAW and what was just discussed before to get the United States, not only the cities here, but the United States to sign on to CEDAW. I'm calling on you to say we need an equal rights amendment to the United States Constitution, and we are short. We have reintroduced legislation, Carolyn Maloney taking a lead on it from New York, Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney and others, to say, forget about the 3 states that did not ratify, because you need 38 states to ratify. And in the 80s, we had 35 states. We need to leave that on the side and ratify in 21st century, 2015-16, the Equal Rights Amendment to the United States Constitution now. And I call upon you all to press your congresspeople and anybody you know to get that ratified. I call upon you to fight for equal pay for equal work, as Ellie, represented this morning, to protect our right for safe and legal abortion and reproductive rights, to join the national campaign that you may or may not know about, which is fighting to get women on our currency. How many people have heard about that? All right. To get a woman, a famous woman, on United States currency, there's a movement called Women on 20s. My friend is running that movement out of New York, but they've presented 500,000 petitions to the White House and to Secretary Lew to make sure this happens. And they have committed to doing it, but it's a fight over which man they substitute and kick off the bill to put on one of our women leaders, okay? So let's get that done. Let's get that done. I mean, look at all the countries in the world that have had women on their currencies. I mean, isn't that a lot to ask? We are half and more the population of this country and the voters of this country. Why can't we get that done? And one other thing, gals. In 1977, this woman, Bella Abzug, when she was in Congress before, got $5 million to create a national women's conference, a modern conference in Houston, Texas, first of its kind since the early suffragette conferences. She got $5 million to run it. 30,000 women and men from around the country attended as official delegates, a national conference, to create a 24-plank agenda, which Bella used as a basis to help negotiate Beijing platform. I say to you, and I call upon you to say, let's put together a national women's conference in some city, maybe here, all right, maybe in the great city of San Francisco, to bring together women and girls from every state and territory in this country to really fight for our rights. So today, in closing, I want to say I was very fortunate to be not only the daughter of Bella, but to be her friend and to have her as my guide and model. And not everybody, obviously, has one of the great leaders of the 20th century to be their mom or to be, because of that, at the ringside of movements, which I was. I realized that that was a very lucky situation for me. That's why I want to share it. That's why I need to support younger women who come from all sorts of backgrounds and socioeconomic households where, they know intuitively that they can break the barriers, but they need mentors and support as we mentor each other. We need to mentor them, and they need to mentor us. I learn as much from my students as I give them. And I think young women have a lot of energy, and I think we have the context to set it. The 12 points of the Beijing Agenda and what needs to be discussed will be going on in the conversations today. But I plead with you to say, let's act, not just talk. Never give in, never give up, never fail to tell the truth. Never fail to stand by the principles. As we say, my mother died with her boots on to the end of her life, and it was a shortened life because of all the stuff that she had to face as a pioneer political woman in Congress and internationally. She died at 77 because she worked herself to the bone. You know that, any of you who worked with her or knew her. But we need to realize the dream, and we cannot surrender. We have to fight for full equality, both here and internationally. It's too long. It's been going on too long. In 2020, it'll be 100 years since we, in this country, won the right to vote. The centennial. Let's figure out something to do to really make a revolution in terms of having, we don't want to control men. We want our equal share at the tables of power, whatever table of power that is. So in closing, I want to say thank you for having me here. Never give in, never give up, never surrender. Do it with a sense of passion, compassion, commitment, and humor. Bella had great humor. And flair. Bella wore those hats. You see that hat she's wearing over there? Well, she was the first, and she used to say, one last thing, don't be mistaken, because everybody recognized for her flamboyant hats. Don't be mistaken. It's not just the hat. It's what is under the hat. That counts. Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.